Paying security, well, could it make us even more financially insecure? Senator Tom Coburn saying Homeland Security has spent $35 billion in grants to make America safer, but it still can't measure if we're actually safer. And he says the department's wasting money on things like a zombie apocalypse training and underwater robots. The Republican from Oklahoma is now here with more. By the way, I have to say thank you. I love every year when you come out with your pork reports. It's just absolutely fascinating how Washington gets so creative wasting our taxpayer money. And to your point, are we any safer for all of this?
Well, I think that's a big question. The urban area security initiatives that were passed in 2003 are important about hardening our greatest risk cities. The 9/11 Commission said we shouldn't be spending any money unless we're doing it on a risk-based calculation. And this security initiative got all the way up to 66 cities. And what has happened is what was intended to harden our cities and make us more resistant to terrorism has now become a parochial grant-making process that isn't based on metrics and can't tell us whether or not the next dollar spent is actually going to make us any safer. And so what we want to see is some real teeth in the grants to say if we're going to spend this money, borrow it from China or borrow it from our kids, then it ought to make sure that we're getting our money's worth for it, and it actually is going to support what we intended to, which is to increase the security of our biggest, most vulnerable cities.
Senator Coburn, is it just the fact that the accountability issue, where does the buck stop on this kind of stuff? It feels like, these guys have a lot of this money and they can do things like this. Is there any specific person who's ever held accountable?
Well, the people you should be holding accountable is not the agency, because we're allowing the agency to do that. That's why I do these reports. It's Congress doesn't do its job of oversight or writing legislation that says if you're going to spend this money, here's the metrics that have to be met before you give a grant. And so we hand all that over to the agency, and then we see this kind of waste and stupidity. And I have no doubt that a large portion of this $35 billion actually hardened our cities. But the fact that we don't know it did, we don't have a metric to measure it, we don't know how the money's spent, there's no follow-up on the grants, just shows the incompetency of the agency, but also the incompetency of Washington in terms of doing what they're supposed to be doing.
And, of course, on that note, we're talking about the fiscal cliff. And then earlier today, President Obama even brought the debt ceiling debate, or would-be debate, into the picture. It feels like a lot of the work that you do is maybe, I don't want to say necessarily ignored, but, when we're talking about trillions in debt, maybe people say, okay, we spent $100 grand on this, or maybe $500,000 watching shrimp on a treadmill, that kind of stuff. It's insignificant and not a big deal.
Well, it's a big deal because the way you eliminate a $1 trillion deficit is $1 billion at a time. And the way you get $1 billion is 100 million or 10 million at a time. So what is our excuse? Can we say it's okay to waste money in hundreds of thousands of small areas that add up to trillions of dollars? Or do we only have to look at big areas? So what I would put forward to you is Congress isn't doing their job. Right. Both in terms of how they write it, how they appropriate it, and how they oversight it. And, I actually still pick a penny up if I see it on the ground, because the penny's worth 3.5 cents. So, I mean, every penny counts. Right. And everybody that's out there struggling in America today, every one of their pennies count, and we don't have the luxury of ignoring stupidity and waste in this government anymore.
Senator Coburn,
I've got
less than a minute, and I've got to squeeze this in here. But do you think that the mindset, we could be at some sort of weird transitional, transformative point in this country where it's okay, where it's okay to spend money we don't have, where the American public has given a thumbs up to that idea?
I don't think they've given a thumbs up to that idea. I think this last election was about what was sold as tax fairness, which if we do it the way the administration wants to do it, ultimately will hurt our growth. But nothing in terms of discussion about the tremendous hundreds of billions of dollars every year that get wasted by this government. And, we can pass all the tax hikes in the world on American citizens. It's never going to solve the problem, because you can't raise enough tax dollars if you confiscated it all to pay for what we've built up.
I got to tell you, confiscating it all might be on the agenda. Again, thank you for your work. I appreciate it. The viewers do.
All right.
And go in there and
Charles.
fight the good fight. We need you. Thanks.
All right. See you.
All righty. Well, if you think the Tea Party is losing